Dear fine viewers of this great video, I have been in a long-term serious relationship with my Canon M50. And like any relationship, there have been ups and there have been downs. But what everyone wants to know is, am I going to pop the question? And for the answer to that, you have to watch at least my 8-second intro. So here you go. The wonderful Canon M50. This thing has been with me for about 6 months now and gone through a lot, from being the pro camera when we were NHL, National Hockey League media, to VIP Grand Canyon helicopter tours, to multiple wipeouts on one wheels. And this thing has been a friggin' champ. And in fact, it is the number one recommendation I have for people looking to get into content creation that have some sense of a budget. It's really, really good, and we're going to walk through why that is. I mean, first and foremost, any camera brand I would say out there, Fuji, Sony, Panasonic, Canon, Nikon, they can all take good photos. And even this thing, I made my wife come on a photo shoot with me, and I took some photos, and I mean, it was with a nice lens, a Sigma 18-35 f1.8, but you can see, photo-wise, it does a great job. I think that's actually more about the lenses. And unless you're trying to do sports photography where you need 20 frames per second and you're dying for a, A9, it's going to take great photos for any kind of content that you want to be able to create. Just put a good lens on it. The part where it really, really, really stands out is the movie/video feature set value that you get out of the camera. It's got that amazing dual pixel autofocus that means that your stuff's going to be in focus no matter what you're doing, and you don't really have to worry about it. It's got the flippy screen, which is super handy for any kind of video creation in general, but especially if you're planning to be in front of the camera. It's got the audio input jack, so you can put a microphone into it. It shoots slow motion, 60 frames per second, does 4K time lapses, which is actually a handy feature for being able to punch in and zoom across and do all sorts of handy things very, very quickly. It's got digital image stabilization, so if you're throwing a nicer lens on it, you're able to stabilize. Not as good as in-body image stabilization, but still works. And it has 4K in the right context. Now, it is cropped in even more, and you don't get the great autofocus with it, but it looks really, really good. In fact, we use this camera to shoot in 4K and ended up on the Nitron, the big screen, and the Stanley Cup Finals in the NHL. And it was good enough for there on cheap camera. And I think that's a big part about this camera that people need to understand. Right now, B&H Photo, this camera is on sale for $699 US. And that is crazy, given that the video footage coming out of it looks fantastic. And there are people who are like, oh, Canon video is soft, it's garbage, they're falling behind, they're doing this and that. You cannot argue with the fact that the video coming out of here looks really, really good, provided you have a reasonable amount of light. And obviously, the better the lens you put on it, the better it's going to be. But man, $699. The other big important part about this is that the lenses that come with the camera, or you can buy for the camera, are also cheap. This 22mm f2 lens, one, fits in your pocket, and two, is on sale right now for $229. And this is all you need. This lens right here can do some amazing B-roll, can shoot details, can do all sorts of awesome things when you're starting out, and it costs almost nothing. I mean, it's something. I know it's something. It's a couple $100, but quite good. The other thing, too, is the ultra-wide-angle lens, if you want to go that kind of classic vlogging look. I think this thing's like $350 for 11 to 22 millimeter. But the other nice thing about the M50 is, compared to the other Canons, is that the kit lens that comes with this is 15 millimeters on the wide end versus normal Rebel cameras are 18 millimeters. And that width actually makes a difference, because you can vlog with the kit lens on this and not feel like you're just getting straight face the whole time, whereas I feel like on a Canon SL2 or T7i or some of those other cameras, for starting out, you can skip the 11 to 22 millimeter, where I feel like for those other cameras, you kind of need to get that 10 to 18 millimeter. So, that's a nice feature of this camera. Other things I've come to appreciate about this camera, having a full touchscreen, cough, cough, unlike Sony, is super, super handy, whether you're wanting to change settings or review footage, and scrub through the footage that's happening on your camera, all sorts of things. I love being able to fully touch and interact with everything on it. I also love that the buttons on the camera are almost all customizable. And so I've got another video here about setting it up for filmmaking, where you can see that you can change some of the buttons to make it easier if you're primarily a video shooter or even maybe a photo shooter, or there's just certain things you want to be able to access more quickly. And I mean, the glaring big opposite of big one is the size and weight of this camera is just awesome. I love the tight places that you can get it in. I love how small and compact it is. It's not so intimidating, especially if you're out vlogging in public or creating videos, that people don't feel as weird about it. And even just your ability to handhold and shoot and be stable and do all sorts of things with such a light camera is super, super handy. Now, before I get accused of being a massive Canon fanboy, let's talk about some of the things that kind of annoy me about this camera. And the biggest one, I think, is actually a fundamental lack of power in the processor in this. Now, this has the newest Digic 8 processor, which is also on the brand new Canon EOS R, their kind of flagship mirrorless full-frame camera. And it just seems like it can't do that much. Like, it only shoots 120 frames per second at 720p, and even that footage doesn't look all that great. It can't shoot 4K in the full width. It has to crop it in because, well, it's way less processor intensive. And the low light performance on it is honestly one of the things that drives me the craziest. Is it like passable for a story? Yeah, but it's grainy and it doesn't look good. It looks like a mess whenever you're getting up. Like, here's a photo of me shooting at ISO 6400, which isn't that high, and it's so grainy. And even footage that I've shot when I'm trying to get the ISO up there because the kit lenses aren't that fast, it just feels like it's falling apart. And to me, that just all comes back to the processing power. I'm not a huge fan. Also, the battery life on it, it's using these smaller batteries than something like the M5 has, and so the battery life goes fairly quickly. The nice thing is third-party batteries are cheap, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Other things, there's no in-body image stabilization, which would be nice. It has the digital image stabilization. It doesn't look quite as good, and the problem is to smooth out the footage, it has to like crop in a little bit more, so it can be hard to stay wide and be smooth if you have lenses that don't have stabilization. And for live streaming, the only way it works for live streaming is if you are in manual focus. That way you can turn off all the icons and the face tracking box doesn't show up and it'll be clean so it can go out. But I did not find a single way to keep it on longer than 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, it is going to go to sleep. I tried a power adapter. I tried different things. My buddy Dave Altazer on Kinotika, his seems to work. He said he streamed for longer periods of time. I just could not figure it out any way that I did. Maybe a different power adapter or maybe something. I just couldn't override that setting. And I think the last thing is just generally I want more lenses for this camera from both Canon but also third-party manufacturers. Sigma has this amazing 16mm f1.4 that I had for my Sony. I want them to make a native EFM mount, and I think more of that will come. Although with all these new mirrorless cameras coming out, we've got new ones from Nikon and new ones from Canon that have new lens mounts that are different than this. It's harder for manufacturers to decide what they're going to make more lens mounts for. And I have a feeling the EFM line could get left behind as they move on to the new RF mount for Canon or the Z mount or Z mount for Nikon. It'll be interesting to see even Panasonic's going to have a new lens mount. Okay, with that whole list of pros and cons, though, I do still believe this is the best budget creation tool out there. It's just got such a wide range of options, from all those video options to the flip out screen to the audio input jack to good looking footage to reasonably priced lenses to everything you need. You can kind of get for around $1,000 US if you were to say, hey, I want the camera, I want some kind of lens that can shoot like nice B-roll and details, I want a microphone to put on top, I want a GorillaPod, and I want a memory card. That's about $1,000. And that is wild value for something that can kind of do a little bit of everything. And for us, we've had lots of paid work with this camera. We've gone all sorts of places. And other than when I get into low light, I'm generally happy to take it almost anywhere doing anything. But I guess that leads me to the thing where, am I going to keep this camera? No. But that's just because this is all I do for a living. And there's some options from Sony that are supposed to be coming out this month that will actually give me everything that I want in a camera where it's going to add on some of that super slow motion, 120 or 180 frames per second, full frame 4K, some of that stuff. But that is really stuff you get down to the road later. You don't need that stuff for starting out, and that's what makes this awesome. I'm also going to have to pay through the nose for it because this is such a much more cheaper, high-value platform than I think what you're going to get on Sony. But if you're looking to get this, here's some ideas for some accessories, and some of them you can see here. The Rode Video Micro for $59 US is awesome for a couple of reasons. One, it doesn't require battery, it works well with the camera, and you get the super wind foamy dead cat thing on it. Really good value. I like this small rig cage just for the extra protection that it adds, and it's not like a whole lot of weight, and the camera's already very light that you're able to do it. Adds a bigger grip that you're able to grab onto and a little bit of protection. My camera early on, I dropped it on the side where the mic is, and it actually pushed into the port, and I can't pull my jack out of my headphone port, my input port, or else it'll break it. You want a GorillaPod. This is a little bit heavier duty, but the 3K, GorillaPod 3K, is awesome for stability. Even when you're vlogging, it's a good counterbalance, so your B-roll's better. There's so much stuff you can do it. You want to do that. I love SanDisk memory cards. They've never failed on me. Like, they'll break eventually, but they've never failed, so I like SanDisk cards. And, some of the lenses that we've talked about, the 22 millimeter, I've done some seriously cinematic things with this Sigma 18 to 35 millimeter with the M adapter that is awesome. And batteries. When you talk about this, you're going to need some more batteries. These new MOA, you get 2 batteries and a charger for like $25 or $30. And that is awesome because then you have 3 batteries, and that's usually enough to do almost anything you need to do. So, you can also check out my video for filmmaking tips for this if you want to get into more like cinematic styles of some settings, some other things you're going to do. We're not going to get into that. But, yeah, awesome camera, Canon M50. Definitely a step in the right direction for camera. Canon camera. I hope that they upgrade the processing power in the next generation so they actually can compete on the same level for some of those more advanced features. But for the price, you can't beat it. I'm Justin Rivas. Thanks for watching. Hit that subscribe, like, blah, 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 blah. Whatever the stuff all the other people say, I should probably say it too. Okay, cool. All right.